This is a brief summary of Lord Foul's Bane, the first chronicle of Thomas Covenant, the Unbeliever. That beauty and truth should pass utterly. Part 1. Revelstone. Chapter 1. The Dreams of Men. By the time Thomas Covenant reached his house, the burden of what had happened to him had already become intolerable. When he opened the door, he found himself once more in the charted neatness of his living room. Everything was just where he had left it, just as if nothing had happened, as if he had not spent the past 4 hours in a coma, or in another world where his disease had been abrogated, despite the fact that such a thing was impossible. Impossible. His fingers and toes were numb and cold. Their nerves were dead. That could never be changed. His living room, all his rooms, were organized and carpeted and padded so that he could at least try to feel safe from the hazard of bumps, cuts, burns, bruises which could damage him mortally because he was unable to feel them, know that they had happened. There, lying on the coffee table in front of the sofa, was the book he had been reading the previous day. He had been reading it while he was trying to make up his mind to risk a walk into town. It was still open to a page which had had an entirely different meaning to him just 4 hours ago. It said, "Modeling the incoherent and vertiginous matter of which dreams are composed was the most difficult task a man could undertake." And on another page it said, "The dreams of men belong to God." He could not bear it. He was as weary as if the quest for the staff of law had actually happened, as if he had just survived an ordeal in the catacombs and on the mountainside, and had played his involuntary part in wresting the staff from Lord Foul's mad servant. But it was suicide for him to believe that such things had happened, that such things could happen. They were impossible, like the nerve health he had felt while the events had been transpiring around him or within him. His survival depended on his refusal to accept the impossible. Because he was weary and had no other defense, he went to bed and slept like the dead, dreamless and alone. Then for 2 weeks he shambled through his life from day to day in a kind of somnolence. He could not have said how often his phone rang, how often anonymous people called to threaten or berate or vilify him for having dared to walk into town. He wrapped blankness about himself like a bandage, and did nothing, thought nothing, recognized nothing. He forgot his medication and neglected his VSE, his visual surveillance of extremities, the discipline of constant self-inspection on which the doctors had taught him his life depended. He spent most of his time in bed. When he was not in bed, he was still essentially asleep. As he moved through his rooms, he repeatedly rubbed his fingers against table edges, door frames, chair backs, fixtures, so that he had the appearance of trying to wipe something off his hands. It was as if he had gone into hiding, emotional hibernation or panic. But the vulture wings of his personal dilemma beat the air in search of him ceaselessly. The phone calls became angrier and more frustrated. His mute irresponsiveness goaded the callers, denied them any effective release for their hostility. And deep in the core of his slumber, something began to change. More and more often, he awoke with the dull conviction that he had dreamed something which he could not remember, did not dare remember. After those 2 weeks, his situation suddenly reasserted its hold on him. He saw his dream for the first time. It was a small fire. A few flames without location or context, but somehow pure and absolute. As he gazed at them, they grew into a blaze, a conflagration, and he was feeding the fire with paper. The pages of his writings, both the published bestseller and the new novel he had been working on when his illness was discovered. This was true. He had burned both works. After he had learned that he was a leper, after his wife Joan had divorced him and taken his young son Roger out of the state, after he had spent 6 months in the leprosarium, his books had seemed to him so blind and complacent, so destructive of